On a January night in 1977, Easey Street in Collingwood was on edge. A week earlier, a crime almost beyond comprehension had been committed. Two women were found stabbed to death in their home, and police were on the hunt for the killer.
Known as the Easey Street murders, they were so horrendous they stunned Melbourne.
In a sliding doors moment, 17-year-old Perry Kouroumblis was stopped by police in a street near the crime scene. A knife in a scabbard was found in the boot of his car.
It's about 9 days after Easey Street. He says, look, I was crossing an overpass over the local railway station. I saw the knife and I went and picked it up, and this is it.
The knife was identified by police as having been used in the shocking crime.
So why didn't police treat this bloke as a person of interest? He was young. There was a group of clear identified suspects, so you wouldn't be wasting your time on somebody who's on the periphery.
47 years later, an arrest warrant was issued for 65-year-old Perry Kouroumblis for the murders of 27-year-old Susan Bartlett and 28-year-old Suzanne Armstrong.
I think this is Victoria's most serious cold case and longest cold case.
Well, when I heard the news last night, you could have knocked me off the chair with a feather. I was dumbfounded.
The accused worked as a welder and lived in the Dandenong warehouse next to Phil Akers. They got to know each other over 10 years, but Perry Kouroumblis never brought up his connection to Melbourne's longest-running cold case.
In fact, that photo, I believe I took that photo of him sitting on the motorbike at the back of the bus. That was taken at the entrance to his factory, which is, as I said, next to mine. So, as I said, he lived a simple life. He wasn't flashy or flamboyant in any way.
Susan Bartlett and Suzanne Armstrong were childhood friends who grew up together in Benalla in Victoria's high country. They were both working as teachers and living in Easey Street, Collingwood, with Susan Armstrong's baby boy. The women were killed on January 10, 1977, but it would be 3 days after when police arrived at the scene.
What the police found was Susan Bartlett in the hallway near the front door. She'd been stabbed more than 20 times. It became quite clear that she'd fought for her life. There were defensive wounds. Susan Armstrong was in a bedroom. She had been sexually assaulted and stabbed more than 50 times.
Suzanne Armstrong's 16-month-old boy, Gregory, was found alive in his cot, crying, severely dehydrated, but untouched.
Just normal young women living in a share house in a suburb of Melbourne, killed in that manner and leaving a baby in that form is something that became a major incident in Melbourne.
A coronial inquest followed and there were a handful of suspects.
We are close to solving the murder, yes.
What angles are you following now?
Oh, I don't really wish to elaborate on the precise aspects of the investigation.
At the time, Perry Kouroumblis was identified as the person who found the murder weapon. He was living with his parents just 300 metres from the victim's home.
The inquest is held in July of the same year. Our young man doesn't turn up to give evidence. It's July 1977, I think July 12 when the inquest starts. July 20, the family sell their house in Bendigo Street, and at some point later the parents go back to Greece.
We've got no one that's standing out as a strong suspect.
The case went cold until 2017. Police offered a $1 million reward. Behind the scenes, police began, one by one, ruling out 130 persons of interest through DNA testing until one name remained: Perry Kouroumblis.
The suspect has been ordinary. He's lived an ordinary life. I don't believe he's come under great police attention. He certainly had a record as a youth, but nobody would know him if he walked past them in the street. He only came to light when they knocked on his door and said, "Can we have some DNA, please?" He goes, "Yes, not a problem," and then he just disappears. and he goes to Greece.
No, I don't think he's capable of murder. As I said, anything is possible, but I never saw any aggression in him at all.
Phil Akers says Perry moved to Athens to look after his elderly mother.
From time to time during the years, he would travel over there to visit his mother, and then she got unwell, and he said that there was no one. So he moved there in about 2016, and then sold up all his assets and property here, and lived there.
Back in Australia, police were zeroing in on their prime suspect. A crucial DNA match was made through a member of his family.
Well, this will be a matter for the courts, but my understanding is it's a family DNA, which the police will allege is a match to samples that were found at Easey Street.
Coronial documents from 1977 reveal DNA from blood and semen samples were collected from all over the crime scene by officers.
The use of DNA technologies in criminal work has advanced significantly, particularly over the last decade or so. We've increased the sensitivity of the testing such that now we can obtain a DNA profile from a few cells that aren't visible to the naked eye.
Forensics expert Helen Roebuck says investigators need to be wary of potential contamination.
Whatever form that contamination may be, whether it be from an investigator or from background DNA being introduced into the sample.
Victoria Police were unable to compel local authorities to arrest Perry Kouroumblis in Greece because of the statute of limitations in the country, which puts a 20-year deadline on when charges can be laid for the most serious crimes. It meant police here had to issue an international arrest warrant and wait for him to leave Greece before they could pounce. That moment came late last week at Rome Airport when an Interpol red notice was triggered. Mr. Kouroumblis is reportedly now sitting in Rome's Regina Coeli prison.
Regina Coeli is a very bad jail. It's in the city of Rome, an old jailhouse with a lot of problems regarding medical treatment, overcrowding, no warm water. He's going through a hell right now.
Australian authorities have initiated extradition proceedings, but how quickly he returns to Australia depends on whether he fights the extradition process, which could drag out for months.
It takes something like 6 months or 4 months for the first decision, which is led by the Court of Appeal. And then the defendant has the right to go to Supreme Court. This may take a couple of 2 or 3 months more. And if Supreme Court confirms the extradition, the last word has to be spoken by the Ministry of Justice. Because when it comes to extradition, there is always a political aspect as well.
A drawn-out process which will ensure, after almost 50 years, this case has a long way to run.
I definitely will follow the story. If he wants to reach out to me, I'm quite happy to have a chat to him. But yeah, I'll follow the story because I think I'm interested. I mean, it was a bit of a shock to my system.